Well, as the holiday of Thanksgiving is starting to get celebrated here in the United States, we want to kick off this week with a great program where we dial up Steven Blakesley, the Director of Communications for the Open Wheel Showdown, which will be taking place on December 2nd on the pavement at the Bullring at Las Vegas. And this is going to be a real treat as they're going to have winged sprint cars, midgets, and Supermodifieds on the pavement. That's coming up next after these messages. Dave's Home Supply specializes in cabinets, flooring, and countertops. Visit their website at daveshomesupply.com to look at products, services, financing, and even a free estimate. Are you looking for bookkeeping, payroll, or income tax services? Then check out the folks at For You Simple Bookkeeping. They are a licensed tax preparer throughout the entire United States. For more information, click on the link in the description. Me on Track Talk is a special guest, a person that I've come to know pretty well the last few years, and he operates as the Director of Communications for the Open Wheel Showdown that'll be taking place at the Las Vegas Bullring, and that is Steven Blakesley. Steven, great to have you.
Yeah, glad we could finally get together on an interview. It seems like there's probably about 5 or 6 different ways that we overlap. And now probably the most unique way is this big pavement race.
No doubt. And it's going to be exciting. Normally we talk about dirt track stuff. This is probably the first thing where it's been strictly pavement, but there's a little bit of cross pollination, because looking at the entry list, there's guys that definitely know how to do dirt track racing or are very familiar and very successful at dirt track racing that is a part of the pre-entry list.
Yeah, so for the fans that don't know what we're talking about, the Riscon 360 Open Wheel Showdown, the highest paying short track race in America this year and the highest paying pavement open wheel short track race of all time. $50,000 to win for the winged sprint cars, $10,000 to win for the midgets, and $5,000 to win for the Speed Tour Supermodified. So you're talking 3 big main events. And when you put up that kind of money and this time of year in December, on December 1st and 2nd, I think that just is a draw for anyone that is into open wheel sprint car and midget racing to come out and go after that lucrative purse. And like you talked about, especially in the midgets, a lot of names that the dirt fans will know on that side of things. Of course, Justin Grant, the 2-time USAC champion, will be in there, and Cody and Tanner Swanson will be in there. So really on the midget side, we've got a lot of names from the dirt. And then on the sprint car side, it's just the best of the best in the pavement sprint cars. Seems like the sprint cars have become a bit more specialized now that they're winged and not really connected with USAC anymore. Where the pavement side is the specialists, the guys that are really, really good at it, and a lot of connections to Indianapolis and with the Indy 500 on that entry list. And it's a little bit of a best of both worlds with having all these different series in there.
Well, and kind of just leading off sort of the list, at the top of the list, Bobby Santos III, probably one, like when it comes to average finishes, is just so dominant in pavement sprint car racing, and is just masterclass at places like Anderson or Lucas Oil Speedway in Brownsburg, and just phenomenal. And he's a pretty good super modified driver too.
Yeah, I would say he's kind of taking the torch from Dave Steele, the late Dave Steele, as far as being the real pavement specialist with 12 Silver Crown wins, all of them on the pavement, the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour title. But he's going to have a lot of competition and a lot of folks nipping at his heels with, we're expecting in the neighborhood of 60 to 70 winged sprint cars. So Santos is one of many, and I'm sure we'll dive into some of the names. But, I mean, we go as far as the last 8 winners of the Little 500 are in this field. So it's the 2023 Must-Be champion, Jason Blonde, 3-time King of the Wing national champion, Eric Humphreys, just all varieties of drivers. You got Evan Margison, the winner of the Pink Lady Classic at Meridian, Idaho, in the field. Davey Hamilton Jr. and Sr. in the field. Tanner Swanson with the wings on, driving for Aaron Pierce. So there's easily 10 to 15 drivers that are going to make Bobby work for it.
Well, most definitely. And Davey Hamilton Jr., when it comes to sprint car racing has just been absolutely awesome this year. Doesn't matter if he's in Florida, if he's in the Midwest, he's always up front, and he's collected a lot of wins this year, including a couple weeks ago, I believe, at Citrus County Speedway.
Yeah, won that Sandy DeCare race down there in Florida and comes into this thing with a ton of momentum. And obviously he's also promoting the event, so he's got a lot of different hats to wear, but he's got a great officiating crew, all the officials from the 500 Sprint Car Series, which is the spinoff from the Little 500. They're going to be officiating the race. And then the race director from Oswego, Chuck Hanley, he's going to fly out from New York and be the race director. So once we get into race week, Davey, his hat for promoter comes off and his helmet goes on, and he's going to be a formidable force this weekend, or next weekend in the wing sprint cars for sure.
Well, what's really cool is, and you kind of mentioned it, just the whole patchwork of drivers that are coming literally across the country and across Canada too, that are going to be converging in Las Vegas, because you've got all these pockets, right? All these series in certain regions, and basically the top drivers from those regions are going to be headed to Nevada for a sensational event.
Yeah, we have 11 states on the entry list, plus almost a dozen drivers from Canada. And when you think of Canada, there's actually two different regions of Canada that have a lot of success on pavement. With the British Columbia group, you're probably familiar with all the history there, sure, with races like the Strawberry Cup and the Daffodil Cup. But then you've also got some of the guys in the Ontario area that come down and run with Musty in Michigan and in the upper Midwest. So you have two different pockets of Canadians. So there is strength on strength on strength. Really good group of Idaho drivers, a lot of Central Valley, California drivers for folks to root for, a lot of Florida drivers. Of course, Indiana is represented. So it is a little bit of everything all coming together. And what's really amazing is it's the inaugural year, and there are some teams that didn't completely jump on the bandwagon in year one. That there's a whole nother 15 or 20 guys that I think you'll see wanting to do this next year. And we did a 75 car limit. I think not all 75 are going to turn up. In the end, there will be some guys that drop out, and we'll be in the 60s. But it wouldn't surprise me if we don't have closer to about 100 of them trying to get on board in year two. It's just, the pavement thing is a little bit bigger, I think, than people realize, and it's had a lot of growth the last couple of years. Even for me, it's grown more than I realized now that I'm a part of it. And so we're going to get to see that all come together in Las Vegas.
Well, and what's really cool is, speaking of Canadians, is on the entry list is a guy that spent the full season with Jason Sides Motorsports with the World of Outlaws, and Robbie Price. And Robbie is no stranger to racing paved sprint cars. Western Speedway, unfortunately, not any longer with us on Vancouver Island, home of the Daffodil Cup. Robbie's family is a huge lineage of pavement racing. And Robbie, back in the day with the NSRA, was pretty quick and somebody to watch.
Yeah, that's probably one of the ones where he does bring a big pocket full of dirt experience to the table. I mean, that's the guy that's run quite a bit with the World of Outlaws. Like you mentioned, with Fives, he's run in the ASCS. He's kind of done a little bit of everything, but kind of one of the stars of NSRA from about a decade ago. And that's kind of the cool thing about this entry list is it is somewhat a bit of the names of the past being merged with the names of the present and the future as well. When you look at some of the West Coast guys, really like with Robbie Price from BC, and then guys like Mike Mergerdio, who I used to watch at Altamont, and that was, 18 years ago, 17 years ago. Drivers that have raced at the Turkey Night when it was on pavement, and that ended in 2011. That's a good 12 years ago. So it's going to be a little mix of that and a mix of experience levels. And for a fair number of these drivers, a lot of them don't have a ton of winged experience on pavement. A lot of them have done either dirt or a lot of non-wing with USAC or Little 500. So there are some guys that are going in there that don't have a ton of winged experience, and on an awfully fast track, it ought to be entertaining to see how that all melds together.
Well, and a driver, I think, and I'm not trying to be biased, but I'm just pointing it out, is Aaron Willison from Langley, BC. He traveled to the Little 500, and he's been kind of the guy when it comes to the Northwest Sprint Tour that they have kind of organized in British Columbia, as well as went down and has competed with the gunslingers at Eureka's Redwood Acres Raceway.
Yeah, so he picked up that $10,000 weekend at Eureka. I think that was in May, and it also shattered the track record there. And that's the other thing that people need to realize is just how fast these winged sprint cars are. They'll be going around the bullring, the 3/8 mile there. They'll be quicker than the supers, we presume. And in the case of Willison, I believe he broke Rebel Jackson's track record at Eureka. So they were hauling the mail there. And that Northwest group, I think there's a couple of names there. Colton Nelson out of Idaho is going to be really, really formidable. And then we talked about Evan Marchison coming off the Pink Lady Classic. That was probably the biggest race in the country before the Open Wheel Showdown, and picking that one up, hanging on over Davey Hamilton Jr. So there's a couple of Northwest guys that are really coming into there with some momentum. One of the cool things about this event also is some of the names we're mentioning, you might think, well, hey, that's a 360 guy. How's this going to work? With the predominance of 360s on the West Coast, we do have a restrictor, an injector restrictor, and so we kind of even out the 410s and the 360s, and that's just another aspect we'll be keeping an eye on.
Well, and a guy that got a big win at Evergreen Speedway in Monroe, Washington, Kyle Alberting, who is a 360 sprint car dirt track racer and does non-wing sprint cars as well. Again, his dad, Andy Alberting, very prominent. His grandfather, Rick Brown, a very historic and storied name in the Pacific Northwest on dirt but more so on pavement. So it's going to be really cool to see how all that works out.
Yeah, Andy Alberting, he was one of our most recent entries, one of the last drivers to jump on board, and he hasn't run a wing pavement sprint car since 2019, and that just tells you how motivated these guys are. And kind of a similar thing, something I wanted to touch on is when you think about the super modified field real quick is there's a lot of drivers there that are making comebacks. Also, a lot of cars that are making comebacks. It's been pointed out that this race is sort of the revival of the Copper World Classic in a lot of people's minds. There's going to be cars in the field in that super modified race where those cars race at Phoenix in the Copper World. So you've got drivers that have been doing this for 30 years. You've got cars that have been doing this for 30 years. And that super modified field encompasses our longest tow, and that's going to be Dave Danzer, who won the Oswego Classic this year, the 20,000 to win 200 lapper. He's going to put wings on and fly out from Oswego, Oregon, or New York. And I'm thinking of a different Oswego.
Yeah,
Oswego, New York.
There is a lake Oswego.
There is. Flying out from Oswego, New York, and so that's going to be our long tow, Dave Danzer. So even the super modified side is bringing guys out of the woodwork that are kind of new for the West Coast or kind of returning. So every division has all kinds of storylines and veteran drivers, and should be a really dynamic weekend. We're expecting about 100 cars across the three classes, so it should be very dynamic.
Yeah, and you know what's cool is I was doing a little bit of research is that USAC did sanction some super modified races at this venue. I want to think 1986 was the first time, and they've obviously had a lot of midget races, both USAC National, USAC Western States, and I would say the vast majority of the midget races have been in some form or the other, the U.S. Pavement Focus, the D2 series or the Focus Midgets, the Ignite Midgets, whatever they were called at the time. But only a handful of times the USAC Western sprints went there. That would be non-wing. And for you and your research, is this the first time that wing sprint cars have inhabited Las Vegas Bullring?
I think that is the case. They have the King of the Wing deal that ran for a couple of years with a little West Coast swing. I don't think it ever made it to Vegas. Went to Kern, went to Irwindale, Stockton, Havasu, some tracks like that. Don't think it ever made it to Vegas. And you mentioned kind of that history. There aren't that many drivers out of the 100 or so that we're expecting that have run at Vegas. Of course, Otter Cicelli, school teacher out of Central Valley, she's returning. She's run in the Focus cars there. Of course, Davey Hamilton Sr. has a win there in a USAC midget. So there are a couple, but I would say it's probably in the neighborhood of in the teens at the most for number of drivers that have ever raced there. So for a majority of the entrants, they're going to be making their debut there.
Well, and in between the USAC Western States and National Midget Series since 2000 and the USAC Western Sprint Series that was around, they pretty much ran right about the same time, like the first time I have in the new millennium, November 30th, 2002. Tony Stewart swept that weekend, the Triple Crown weekend as they called it. Then, let's see, in 2004, they had a doubleheader for the Orleans Classic. Rory Price, the Rory Price Memorial was a very prominent race at Evergreen for wing sprint cars. That was in October that year. Destiny Hayes from Oroville, some people may remember her from some wing sprint car racing on dirt for many years. She won the sprint car portion where Price won the midget deal. And then 08, 09, and 10, Zach Schiff won in 08, Brian Clausen 2009, and Cody Swanson in 2010. I mean, a pretty cool list of names of former winners in those categories. And like I said, it was either right around Halloween, 2004 was mid-October, or like in the case of 2002, right about the time of the event is happening late November, in this case for this year for the Open Wheel Showdown taking place in early December.
Yeah, I would suspect, like we said, we're expecting to break the track record with the wing sprint cars and really get around there pretty good, especially this time of year. It's going to be cool, and the speeds should be pretty impressive. We'll have the air coming off the wings. It should look like a great visual for the main event. And not only 50,000 to win, 2,500 to start. So it's a real lucrative night for guys, at least to cover their expenses. And then the winner is going to take home a real good payday. So should be an awesome event. 100-lap main event for the wing sprint cars. There will be a break at lap 50 for fuel, but they got to run the same set of tires for the whole 100. So we'll see how guys kind of conserve and work within that. Obviously, track position's always been a premium at the Bullring for the stock cars. Kind of a bit of a one-groove track, kind of work its way up the track as main events go on, but you oftentimes start around the bottom. So guys might have to get pretty aggressive on restarts, and that might be pretty dynamic. So there's going to be a lot of cool aspects to it. There's some qualifying heat races on the Friday portion that's also going to be open for the fans. And pits will be open after the races both nights to come in there and get merchandise, meet the drivers. We're really encouraging folks to get pit passes. The pit passes are a great deal. 3-day passes will be available and 2-day passes. So you can get the pit access, but it also includes the main grandstand. And if for some reason someone can't be there, but like you like to say, I don't know why you wouldn't go, but if you can't be there in Vegas, you can also tune in on Speed Sport, and they're actually doing the weekend pass for that. It's only $24.99, and you'll get Roush Shaheen on the call for the biggest pavement open wheel race in America. So really can't wait for it.
Well, and again, kind of honing back to the whole unifying pavement sprint car racing, because California has the Gunslinger Tour, and then the Midwest has both the Must See Series as well as the 500 Speed Tour. And then the Northwest is, when you think about it, the Northwest is kind of like a Holy Roman Empire / back in the day, like a Confederation of the Rhine, like of just all these series that are put together, which they pretty much work together. The Northwest Sprint Tour, which is BC, the Granite Super Sprints, which is predominantly Monroe. Then you've got like the Inland group that runs at Post Falls at State Line Speedway, and then the Speed Tour that inhabits Meridian, basically pretty much a weekly deal at the Meridian, but they go to Magic Valley, and I think they went to Hermiston as well. And what's really cool is it kind of brings, and I mean, I know I'm beating a dead horse, it brings everybody together.
Yeah, and I think what's really cool when you look at the Knoxville Nationals is a lot of times they'll use that event. Of course, they do the Hall of Fame. They'll use that event to have lots of safety meetings and industry stakeholder meetings. And the Chili Bowl does a little bit of that. I wish they would actually be a bit more aggressive on their rule book and use that as an opportunity to kind of set a standard for the industry. And so I think with the Open Wheel Showdown, we can kind of do that for pavement racing. It's one thing to be the Hatfields and the McCoys or whatever analogy of all these different groups kind of fighting for traction and attention all over the country. But once you get everyone together at a big race like this and they're having a good time and there's a unified goal, you can start to mend fences and bring the whole sport together. And I think that's really what Davey's goal is, that this can sort of be the event that brings the whole sport together, like Knoxville, like the Chili Bowl, and do that for the pavement and maybe have impacts on the rest of the year as well.
Sure. And I was just skimming through the entry list that you provided me, and, we talked a little bit about the midgets, but, there's some notable names there. You got Jesse Love, Nathan Bird, Jake Trainer. Those are some hitters. Tony Zeidelman, who's a WMRA master in the last, almost 20 years. Like, he's been the man of the WMRA. Those are some standout names that I saw just like skimming through this.
Yeah, the number of big names almost gets endless. Like our press release about all the names ended up being a 2-pager. It was pretty sizable. Jesse Love, he had entered before he signed his Xfinity deal with RCR, and I'm not completely privy to all the reasons, but we're actually not expecting him at this time. We're hoping that someone will take the reins of that new engine that Van Dyne has put together. But yeah, that midget field, really cool with Justin Grant running, like we talked about with Cody Swanson, Tanner Swanson. Nathan Bird is a really cool story. The Bird family, so well known for sponsoring drivers and owning cars at Indianapolis. In fact, it was his great-great-grandma that started all that, and then it's kind of trickled down through the ranks. But Nathan is the first Bird to ever be a driver, or at least go after driving professionally. And so Bird is our only triple duty driver at the moment. He's going to try to go for all 3 races. And so we'll see how Nathan does. He's got a really cool Supermodified. He's going to drive this car they call the Joker car. It's a car that's easily 15 years old. Used to be driven by Martin McKeithy back at the Altamont days. Bright green, super, all these question marks on it and stuff. The Riddler, Joker, whatever they want to call it.
Yeah.
And so he'll be running a very unique Supermodified. But Nathan, kind of unique, running all 3 classes. And between having Nathan there, the Hamiltons there, and then the other one we haven't really talked about is Ari Lyondike Jr., who will be making his winged pavement sprint car debut. The former Bachelor is going to try to go for the win.
The Bachelor.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of people with Indianapolis connections there. And that's really, I love the Indy 500. A lot of us involved in the race revere that event. And having that link between pavement, open wheel, Silver Crown, and sprint car racing to Indy has always been a really cool link. And another thing that maybe we can strengthen, Kyle O'Gara, who's running in the midget, that's part of the Sarah Fisher family. So just a ton of Indianapolis connections, which also makes it really cool.
Well, and a guy that has done really well with the Inland group at Post Falls, and when Spokane was running too, TJ Sneva.
Yeah, and a guy where, he's a fabricator, and so I can't wait to see kind of what they bring as far as the car. I'm sure there will be some tricks underneath the 64 for the Spokane driver. Just another one and another name, like you said with the Sneva name. Just all those links to the past of big time IndyCar type racing, just so cool.
Well, and a lot of and continued family ties. I know we're probably the listeners are like, okay, all right, we get it, but brother combinations, father-son combinations. One I don't think we hit on is Brian and Austin Gosel from Colorado. Those guys, Brian Gosel did a lot of Silver Crown racing this year, and both of them did a lot of pavement and dirt track racing throughout the year.
Yeah, and you have Ron and Richie Larson coming in. Like we talked about, Tanner and Cody Swanson, Davey Hamilton Jr. and Sr. They have Kenny Hamilton on the entry list, Grandpa, but I don't think Grandpa is going to give it a go. I think they slid somebody else into the car. You got the Castor family, Cody and Richard Castor. The Ott family is still going with Ricky Ott. His dad used to race in the Copper World Classic, so it seems like once the stuff gets in your blood, it kind of permeates throughout the whole family.
No doubt. It's going to be exciting. I'm really looking forward to watching it on Speed Sport. Fortunately, I'm not going to be there this year, but I'm hoping that next year maybe something can get worked out to where I can go. And no doubt this is going to be a very successful event.
Yeah, we appreciate all you guys, all the media that's taken an interest in it. Something where we all think back to the Copper World Classic and the Turkey Nights on pavement, and we miss those glory days for the pavement, but we're bringing it back in a big way. There's been a couple of very big events in America this year for pavement, for open wheels, and this is kind of the cherry on top for this Open Wheel Showdown. Have to thank Risk-On 360 for being the title sponsor. Just another Indianapolis connection. That's the same company that owns BitNile from Ed Carpenter Racing. So the IndyCar folks are really helping us, and all you media are really helping us, and we just can't wait for Las Vegas December 1st and 2nd.
Well, and for folks that want to follow along, maybe keep an eye on the pre-entry list or any news regarding the event. What's the best websites or social media pages to follow? And I assume you guys will be doing updates throughout the weekend as well.
Oh, yeah. We've got a Discord server with about 15 photographers in it. So we're going to be hitting them up all weekend and posting stuff in real time and just adding to your FOMO. But anyway, so openwheelshowdown.com for all the details. Also, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And plenty of tickets are available. Great ticket prices through the Vegas website. And then pit passes, you can just buy them at the gate. And we are encouraging people to do that. If you're trying to get the discounted hotel rooms at the South Point, we sold that out a while ago. I just told you how big the event is. We sold out the hotel about 2 weeks ago. So you'll have to find, there's a lot of options, of course, in Vegas. But anyway, lots of ways to keep up on it. And then if you want to find the pay-per-view, you can go to speedsport.live. That's a brand new web address for them where they're going to put up different big events they do. And so right now it's a portal for our event, and you can learn more there as well.
Awesome. Well, it's been great catching up with you, Steven. I'm glad that we could finally have this conversation. And again, I think this is everything with sprint car racing on dirt and on pavement. I believe it's all going in good directions, and the sky's the limit, and you can even go beyond the sky.
Well, I appreciate that, and hope to see lots of you guys at the races.
Well, that is going to do it for this interview. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure and hit the like and subscribe button on whatever platform you found this interview at. It really helps us grow the channel, and we greatly appreciate it. In the meantime, we'll be back with more content and interviews in the future. Be sure and have a great evening or a great rest of your day, whatever time you're listening.